So the topics of this presentation are an introduction about Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae and its importance to pig production, and the results of two studies that were developed here in US and in Brazil. And in the first study, we compared the detection of Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae in self-replacement gilts over time. So the Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae is the agent of the enzootic pneumonia, which is a chronic bronchopneumonia that affects pigs of all ages, especially growing and finishing pigs. And it causes dry cough and weight loss, causing important economic losses to pig production. Regarding the transmission rate of Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae, we know it's low, so usually one infected pig can affect one another susceptible pig. However, the shedding of this bacterium is long, so in experimental infections, we can detect Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae for up to 214 days using bronchial swabs. However, in natural infections, we can detect myco for up to 150 days using laryngeal swabs. In addition, the young parity dams are more likely to shed mycoplasma at farrowing, so they are more likely to infect and colonize their piglets during the lactation period. Even though we know the importance of these young parity dams in the transmission of Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae, the average replacement rate is 15%. So it means that a high amount of gilts is introduced in the farms every year. And this replacement can be performed by the introduction of self-replacement gilts or purchasing gilts when we want a genetic improvement. And if you want to introduce purchase gilts, it's important to do it from a similar health status farm. However, we know that the introduction of negative gilts in positive farms is something that occurs frequently. And so far, there's no published information about Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae detection in replacement gilts over time. So the objective of this work was to compare the detection dynamics of Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae in replacement gilts regarding source and flow. So in the first study, we selected 3 multiplier farms in Brazil. All these farms were positive for Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae, and they received self-replacement gilts. And these gilts were never acclimated. So they were introduced, and nothing was done with these gilts to acclimate them. And the farms had between 2 or 3 sites. And we selected farms from 3 different states in Brazil. And these farms had between 1,500 and 3,700 cells. So in this study, we selected around 100 gilts per farm. And when the gilts arrived in the GDU, they were around 150 days of age. And at this moment, we collected laryngeal swabs in order to detect Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae by PCR. After 4 months, the same gilts were collected again using laryngeal swabs. And the gilts were around 270 days of age. 2 months later, the same gilts were collected again using laryngeal swabs, and they were 330 days of age, so many of them were farrowing or lactating, but we had some of them that were already breeding for the next parity. So here we have the results of positive gilts over time in self-replacement gilts that were never acclimated. Here we can see the letter represents the farm, so we have the results from farms A, B, and C. And the numbers correspond to the sampling, so we have the first, second, or the third sampling. And the asterisks represent statistical differences. So what we can see here is that the detection among farms was similar. And the highest prevalences were in the first sampling. So we had between 47 and 67% of the gilts shedding Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae when they arrived in the GDU when they were 150 days of age. We can also see here that the gilts had a decrease in the prevalence of positive animals. So in the first farm, Farm A, we could not detect Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae in none of the gilts. In Farm B, we could detect 1.3% of them shedding mycoplasma. And in Farm C, we detected more than 15% of the gilts shedding Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae, which was close to the fairing, or some gilts were lactating. So they are, it's possible that these gilts could shed mycoplasma to their piglets. Also in this farm, we could see that there was no decrease from the first to the second sampling. And what could have happened here was a higher circulation of Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae, since 5 months prior to the beginning of this study, negative gilts were introduced in these farms and they were never acclimated. Here we have the detection pattern of Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae in self-replacement gilts. So what we can see is that the detection pattern was similar among farms. And the most common detection was a single detection in the first or in the second sampling. And it corresponded to more than 53% of the gilts. Also, we can see that some gilts were never detected positive for myco during the study. And it corresponded to more than 30% of the gilts. So here we don't know if they were already infected before the beginning of the study, and we lost this detection, or it's also possible, since this bacterium has a low transmission rate, it's possible that these gilts were never infected, so they are still susceptible for a future infection. So maybe they can shed Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae in the next fairings. So the take-home messages of this presentation are that non-acclimated self-replacement gilts can present a greater risk to shed Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae when compared to acclimated purchased gilts. Also, it's important to ensure that all gilts are being acclimated in the GDU, since we detected 31% of the gilts that were never detected positive. So they could be still susceptible for a future infection, and they can shed mycoplasma in the next fairings and colonizing their piglets. And under the conditions of this study, similar detection dynamics of Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae in in out and continuous flow was detected. So with that, I would like to thank my advisors, Dr. Bersalos and Dr. Maria Peters, the financial support of AgroScience PIC and Beringen Ingelheim. Also, I'd like to thank Dr. Fano, the farms that agreed to participate in these two studies, and the students, veterinarians, and farms employees that helped us collecting and processing samples.